everybody. Welcome. Rosann and Sandy are talking planning by the signs. And as you guys know, Rosann comes up with the topics every month. So, Rosann, what topic are we talking about today?
Well, we want to look at those killing signs and what that means and what you can do in them and what you shouldn't do in them.
And are you in your kitchen?
I am in my kitchen.
I love that. That seems so appropriate because we're also starting to harvest more.
And it's the best light in the house. It truly is. My little childhood home. This is the sweet spot. So
I love that. I love it. Let me give you guys, before we start, we have been asking for photos. We've been asking for photos, and also we've been asking for all the fisher people out there to give us some of your insight and advice about how fishing by the calendar works too. So we haven't got that yet, Rosann, but I'm hopeful that somebody will bring us some fishing information. But what I want to do from the very beginning is put Rosann's Instagram site in the chat because she gives you such wonderful step by steps. This is an overview of what to expect for the month, and then you take this information and go to her Instagram and follow along as she goes. But let's start with photos. And Rosann has not seen these yet, so I'm excited to show her these. So this comes from Chris, and Chris is in Ohio, I believe, and looks like well, I was going to say tomato plants. That's not a tomato, though.
No, is it a turnip or some kind of brassica?
I don't know. Chris, I know she was running late, but she wanted to come in. I know she also said she had broccoli and Brussels sprouts, but that doesn't look like broccoli or Brussels sprouts. So she's going to have to
I've never grown either one. And it fascinates me how plants can look different at their different life stages, too.
In different areas. I like how, if you missed last month, Rosann was saying that what they grew in North Georgia and sent the seeds out across the United States, those plants that with the seeds look very different than the ones in North Georgia. So definitely check out last month's. One of my favorite flowers in all the world, daisies and black-eyed Susans. So this is beautiful.
Yes. Oh, and those are such fun seeds to save too.
That's just really, really beautiful. How does it? I think the deer. I don't know if the deer like them or not. I can't remember. And okay, Chris, you're definitely going to have to help us out because this is the big leafy.
It's not okra. Anybody in the chat know what this is?
Because I'm seeing kind of down below here. It looks watermelon gourd. Could it be?
It could maybe a gourd. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So if anybody knows, let us know.
Yeah, like I say, I've been gardening 14 years. That just means I've played basketball 14 times. That show you that, you can. I mean, there are certainly experts in gardening, but gardening, it just takes a long time, especially as we do it for a hobby. We're not alive or dependent on it.
And I don't know where everybody is at today, but it is muggy this morning. It's still muggy this morning. I did the mistake of trying to take the dogs for a walk, and they made it to the end of the driveway and said, no. No, that's it. Okay, let's move on now. I'm really excited to show the next set of pictures because this comes from John in Ireland. And we do say that our calendars are specific to our locations. And the ones that we show you on the show are more based for Appalachia. But even still in Appalachia, there's different regions. New York versus Georgia, Alabama would be different. But I really appreciate that John is a regular viewer for us and also wanted to share his Irish garden. And it's just beautiful.
Oh,
I'm swooning. This is just
and I hope that's not the closest I'm ever going to get to Ireland. But if it is a great little visit. How beautiful that is.
And he shared a couple of them with us. And I feel like this, I don't know, John, you're in the chat. I feel like this is maybe like towards the afternoon sun, maybe. And all the cute little plants that they have. I feel like could be right outside the kitchen garden, maybe, of their home. And I love when people just fill up any old pot with a plant. It doesn't have to be fancy pot. Just put something in it. And
Have
it makes an appearance.
oh,
And that's what I do. I garden with my pups too. They wouldn't have it any other way. Those geraniums, those fuchsia hot pink geraniums are just really gorgeous. Okay, so John said that the first one is rose bay, willow, herb are the pink ones. They're beautiful. Now I'm gonna have to look those up because those are just beautiful. And look at this, Rosann. Those,
oh
so,
man.
John, help us out a little bit. Is this your driveway? Is this into your property? Is this down the road that you walked your pup with? This, and the pup's name is Jenny. I just this is kind of what I aspire to have annuals that come up and kind of look wildflowerish and blossom on their own. And I agree, Chris. And it's just fantastic. And
Yes,
this is his driveway.
Oh, beautiful, John. Thank you for sharing.
Look at this. John, you're gonna have to share every month because we're swooning over this.
Yeah, this is John Tyner, our tour guide.
Yes. Definitely. Now, Chris, I see that Chris is here. So, Chris, can you help us out? We're going to go back to your photos real quick. Chris, can you tell us what this is? And it is, give her a few seconds to get to her back to her computer. Actually, Chris, you're going to tell us what all three are, I think. Oh, well, no, we know that one. So the first picture and this one as well.
Chris, those black-eyed Susies really brought back a memory that I had totally forgotten. That was one of the first seeds I started saving, the black-eyed Susies and also the 4 o'clocks. My grandfather had those all the way down his driveway, and he had already stopped farming by that point. But when he showed me about saving the seeds, and if I planted them, they would come up, that was just the biggest secret of the universe. And I had forgotten that till I saw. Isn't that funny how memories are?
And it's gardening. You're doing something you love, and it comes back to you.
And that huge stand of black-eyed Susies. And you know, black-eyed Susies, they don't know that they don't like living in a pot. I've had black-eyed Susies that just would come up just about anywhere. So,
I hadn't thought about a pot, so I'm going to have to try that. Oh, something interesting is going on in the chat too. So John is sharing what the flowers are, and John is in Ireland, and then Shelley is saying that she has them too, and she's all the way on the other side of the world. She's on the west coast of the United States. So to me, this is kind of what Rosann and I wanted to share, is not only how Appalachian garden is and planting by the signs and what it is, but to bring a community together on something that we truly love. If we love the topic of Appalachia, Rosann and I could talk to you guys about this nonstop for probably 24 hours. You guys would go to sleep, we'd still be talking. But the gardening is really special to us. Okay, so Chris is back. So Chris, could you tell us what this is? And then I think this is some kind of watermelon, maybe? I don't know. So Chris, let us know. I'm going to go back to the first one real quick. Okay, while Chris does that, I'm going to share 2 more photos that I actually just snapped a couple days ago. Oh, broccoli. This is broccoli? The first
broccoli.
One? Okay.
I was kind of generally right with the brassica. I've never grown broccoli before.
And pumpkin. Okay. Well, the leaves do look like pumpkin, but I got confused because I'm seeing what I think is a watermelon down here. So I got confused. But she looks like she's going to have a really good harvest as well. Yes. Okay. And then 2 pictures that I snapped just a couple days ago, and this is from my sweet mama's home just south of Nashville, and she has wonderful blooming bushes and trees, and this came from her house just right after the rain, and her lilacs are blooming as well. Lilacs are tough for me.
Yes, me too. Me too. Maybe they were too far south. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a hard time with them. So I want to thank everybody for sharing, your photos with us. I love them. I love seeing what it is. Oh, okay. So Chris said that last one is a special pumpkin for the fair. We hadn't really talked about fairs and what you could do with your planting by the signs for plants, and also what you do with the food. Make
Yeah.
pies, make
Yes, that'd be a
jams.
great fall program.
Yeah. So thanks for that. That we might use that. Okay. Now, the other thing that we want to dive into, let's talk about the calendar. So, as you know, Rosann gives us a wonderful calendar every month that tells us what to do. And I was telling her a story of recently, 2 weeks ago, I was in this location in Tennessee, and they happened to have, as soon as you walk into their business, they have planning by the sign calendars, much smaller. You know, Rosann and I have the real long one. This one is kind of like just a normal size calendar. And we were laughing about it because it's the same, but it's also different at the same time. So, Rosann, can you tell us a little bit about what's different about this calendar than the ones that you and I currently have in our home hanging up?
First of all, I might have to go to that location because well, it was fabulous because it's done a little bit of the decoding for you. And by decoding, I mean on the traditional calendars, they won't say Leo parentheses heart. They will just say heart. And there will be the little icon of the lion, Leo the lion. Leo won't be on there. And I'm accustomed to thinking, like most of us are, uh, in terms of the 12 signs of the zodiac. I would say Leo. But Leo is not on my calendar. We're talking about killing signs this month. Nowhere is Leo on this calendar, but it's on yours. So I love that they have put in a more modern layer of interpretation on it. And Sandy, yours actually had some instructions somewhere
It
on
does.
this.
It was really interesting, and they put in like really interesting things. Like, so on the 13th, it says fast of AB. Now I don't know what AB is, but fast of AB. It says the 13th and 14th of August. This is crazy. What I'm going to tell you. Cut winter wood. Do clearing and plowing, but do no planting.
Yeah, and that's because the signs are in the thighs. That's
Yep.
one of the fire signs. That's in the same category, or the classical astrology word, but it's in the same triplicity. So there's Leo, and Aries, and then Sag, or the head, the heart, and the thighs. Those are all fire signs. But one of the things about Sag is it is a great time for harvest. These are, so we talk about, killing signs are bad signs.
Mm-hmm.
They are bad for planting, and they are wonderful for what you need to keep dry, what you need to make last long term. A lot of people will harvest in a barren sign. And they're especially useful for getting rid of things.
Yeah.
Weeds,
I,
trees.
that's it. Every year every webcast I talk about poison ivy. We get it so bad in our backyard. And that's what
Excuse
happens.
me, I'm going to have to go see about the hoodlums in the other room.
Okay,
Talk amongst yourselves.
okay. Now,
back.
while you do that, I just wanted to point out this calendar again has really interesting tips too. So the garden tips are: do not chill tropical house plants by watering them with cold water. That's a no-go for any time you want to water them, and then let the water stand until it reaches room temperature. Then you're going to do it. They talk about ordering your spring flowering bulbs now. So start looking at your catalogs, look at the stores that have them, and start ordering your spring flowering bulbs now. And it says a good guideline to use is, and this is so funny to me, biggest is best. So in regards to the bulb size. So when you're looking for the spring bulbs that you want to plant, biggest is best, but be careful buying the bargain bulbs because A will be small or inferior quality. This is just a calendar that I picked up for free. It's one of the businesses I happened to walk into, and that's what it has. You'll notice on the 28th, it also says plant seed beds and flower gardens. So we can still plant in August. And we're going to start talking later on in a different month about winter crops. But I just thought the calendar was pretty cool, pretty interesting. And you know, probably all of you are used to it. Rosann and I are used to it. We see things like this and we instantly gravitate towards it.
Yes. And think, you know, you never know where you're going to see one of these calendars. And back in the day, they were literally everywhere. But when I'm in towns, especially small towns, I've not tried this out in larger towns, I like to stop at places like the local funeral home.
Yeah.
At places like
random seed places that might be tiny and you think only for farmers.
Yes, farmers co-ops.
Yeah.
Even the little, you know, the little drugstores with the diners, they're dying out. But in Murphy, North Carolina, you know, that's where you go if you want your Fruity Planting by the Suns calendar.
This is very, very popular free. You notice Rosann said free.
Yes.
Rosann, now this is this year's. I think probably come October, maybe, we'll start seeing next year's for free at businesses. What do you think?
I know I can speak about the calendar that I love out of Greenville, Tennessee. People can start purchasing them in August. That's when the August is usually a release date. But in the little towns I have lived in North Georgia, I didn't see them until January.
Really?
It was like you know, it's a marketing tool for them. It has their name at the top, and you know, people will come back and maybe buy something that were in there. So maybe it's like their Happy New Year card. I don't know. I should ask.
Yeah, that
the
could
next
be.
time.
And I'm not showing the business for this because, you know, they didn't sponsor or pay, and it would be inappropriate for me to show this. And I just want to answer Chris's question: why do you water plants with cold water? And the tip says that delicate root hairs, they don't like the really low cold temperature. They would rather have it warmer. So.
Yeah, my mom believed in everything room temperature. Her eggs had to come to room temperature before she'd make a pound cake. Her milk, her flour, her water for her flowers, that her house plants. So, and I thought that was just mom, but apparently it is a thing. Yeah.
So let's talk then. We've got Rosann's. This is your wonderful, and I do consult this, by the way. I still have the calendar, but I still consult this about 3 times a week to make sure that I'm doing what I should be doing.
Thank you, Sandy.
I mean, I really do. And the thing that I really consult this for is if I know there's a really bad rain coming, and I always like how you say, if there's a rain coming, you know, get out before or after, but you can only try to plant by the signs.
Yeah, that's right. And our 2 things, our grandparents, they planted as they could, not as they can't, you know, as they could not. And sometimes they just had to plant on a wrong day. The second thing is I do hope to catch up. We've had some family illnesses going on this summer. But the kids are started back to school soon. Yay.
They are.
Yeah. So with this fall, I think for me, I can look forward to temperatures starting to drop a little bit. Maybe not in August, but in September. And that's kind of, I know that avid fall gardeners can be just as in love with their gardening as spring gardeners. Most of us garden in the spring, but people that garden in the fall, that's when you know you're real deep down and true gardener.
And there is fascinating fall garden to do. A lot of people think there's nothing to do, but there's a lot of work in the garden in fall. And so stick with us each month. We're going to bring that information to you. But I think we have a quiz first.
Yeah, the quiz
bring
that I
up.
think I emailed you. The
Yeah,
quiz,
so let's bring up this quiz first. So this is the calendar that Rosann prepares for us every month, and I have the same type of calendar. It's the taller one, and like she mentioned, you decode it by looking at the information on the back, as opposed to the one I just showed you. But let's talk about the quiz. Okay, so
yeah.
for
Yeah,
those
this
in
was in
prep,
honor of school starting, and I'm not in it. Yay!
I had nothing to do with back to school shopping. Thank goodness.
So I think it's good to every once in a while review, because this is a lot of complex information if you've never heard of it before. And also, it's one of those things that for me, people could talk about it all day long, but until I actually tried to figure it out for myself, it didn't really stick. So if you know the answer to this, put it in the chat box, and then we'll talk about why is this the answer. Most things are cut and dried, but some things are not. And our first question is in honor of Sandy. When is the best time to plant flowers or vines? Can anybody tell me that?
And are we talking about, we're not necessarily talking maybe about month, or are we talking about month and sign?
Let's look. If you look on the calendar, I'll give you a hint. It's in the first part of the calendar, and maybe zero in on it. And we're talking about when we can plant flowers this month. And I should have specified flower seeds. Planting flower seeds is different than planting flower bulbs. We probably need to get into that, because remember the difference between an above ground plant and a below ground plant. Bulbs are considered a below ground plant. So we want to plant the bulbs. Who can tell me what's happening in the moon phase? If we wanted to plant something underground, what are we going to pay attention to? Well, we plant everything underground. But if we plant what we call a below grounder.
Below ground. See, now you got me, because I was going to say for vines and seeds, that would be the crab or cancer.
Crabs are great, but there is a special set of signs for flowers and vines as well as bulbs.
I'm looking because it's the watery signs, right?
Not for this special set. This is one of those rules that breaks itself when the moon is getting smaller. So Chris, you're right. You want to plant bulbs when the moon is getting smaller, because anything underground, any part that you will eat, or the most usable part, you want to plant in the dark of the moon, when the moon is waning. And on this calendar, when does the moon start to wane? That's the first thing I do when I look at a calendar. I determine the phases of the moon.
And we know it's not the 4th, because that's the bright.
That's a new moon.
That's bright. So we're not. I'm going to give everybody a chance to answer.
So you're looking for the time of the waning moon. If you could look at this calendar, when I first would get my calendars, I wrote all over them. I would make arrows and make signs.
We use highlighters.
Yeah. Okay. So think about 8/26. That is certainly the dark of the moon, Shelley. After you get to that last quarter of the moon, from there on out, and it may lap over into the first of the next month, but from there on out, that is what's known as the 4th quarter. And that's about as dark as you can get. But also, if you back up to the 19th is the full moon. So right after the full moon, that's when the moon starts to wane. And it confused me first, because people would say plant in the dark of the moon, and I'd look at the moon on the 20th, and dang, that moon looked pretty full. So they're not talking about what it looks like; they're talking about the phase. So just as soon as that full moon passes, there's probably a time on here, then technically the waning moon starts. So if you wanted to plant things The third quarter, this 20th through 25th, those are the best days to plant anything underground. Now, some people will also plant into that fourth quarter. Other people avoid it. I haven't been able to avoid it because I just can't get everything done in the quarter 1, 2, and 3.
I tend to avoid, but I think it's also because it's the end of the month and I got a lot of end of month reports too. So.
There you go. So when we're on the moon phase, we probably remember from school that there are 4 primary phases: the new moon, the first quarter moon, the full moon, and the last quarter moon. The last quarter on the 26th is what Shelley pointed out. So Shelley, sometimes I start backwards. Sometimes I'll look for that last quarter, and then I'll say, okay, when is the full? And so I'll know that between those 2 dates, that's the third quarter. That's my sweet spot for any undergrounders.
I love that idea. Start backwards.
I do. I mean, and it may be that just my brain is odd, or it may be that sometimes this calendar is so crowded with important information. And sometimes it's just that I may have to look in a different way, and starting backwards helps me with that.
I love that.
Then to follow through from the 19th to the 12th, I see another moon on the 12th, and I see that's the first quarter moon. So then I know that between the 12th and the 19th, that's going to be called the second quarter. And the moon will be getting bigger. Think how the moon looks right before it gets full. And so some folks say that your really, really sweet spot as far as the moon phases, it's in that second quarter. Now, the trick is to find the right moon phase and the right sign. Sometimes, and sometimes you don't get both. You get one.
Yeah.
And so they're phase of the moon people and they're sign people. And
which one are you, Rosann? Which one do you tend to follow first? I'll say, because you probably follow both. So
I try to follow both, but sometimes I just have to jump in and look for the sign.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times it's because of that fourth quarter. I'll look for the sign. And because I can justify that I found a little pamphlet called God's Way, published in Andalusia, Alabama, and it said, "Don't worry about what the moon is doing. Pay attention to the signs." So I can quote someone long dead.
And say that's what I'm supposed to do. I would say I agree. I look at the sign first.
I did hear, if you read the Foxfire books, which come right out of Appalachia, they say you got to have both. You got to have both. You got to have both. You want the phase to be right, and you want the sign to be right. And so, continue with the looking backwards. After I've found the second quarter, of course, now I want to find the first quarter. So I look back from the 12th and I see, on the 4th. The 4th is our new moon. And again, on the 5th and 6th, if you look in the sky, you might not see anything. And you think, it's dark moon. The sky is dark. But if you can remember, in some religious traditions, it was a big, big deal to spot when that new moon became that tiny little crescent. And I love the idea of watching the sky at night in addition to looking at our calendar. Someone told me in North Georgia that the moon is waxing if the light is on the right.
Yeah.
I never thought about that. I mean, I don't remember my 5th grade or 8th grade or whatever too much, except there were moon phases and there were 8 of them. And if I couldn't remember all 8 of them, I could remember the 4. And the 4 are what's printed on this calendar. So now I know really quickly that I have determined my first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and last quarter. So some people call it last quarter, some people call it fourth quarter. That's the tricky thing about folklore. It's called different things in different areas. And that's how it's confusing when you're reading because it's, oh, only plant that on a dark moon. Well, were they looking at the sky or were they looking at this calendar? Now, calendars and the moon don't jive up. Oh man, I just wish they would. Because here and I think I'm right, every month this year, except for November or December, we're starting off in the fourth quarter. And on the first, we can't see that last quarter because it's in July.
Yeah.
But so if you read someone who's Phil Case does a good job with this his Facebook page, he'll say, we're starting this month off with a dark moon, or the month starts and ends in a dark moon. Now he's not talking woo woo. He's saying we're starting off when the moon is in its waning cycle, and so there's something really important about this fourth quarter. But I want to answer my own question that I digressed on about the best days to plant flowers. We want to look for, if we're planting flower seeds, we want to look for first or second quarter moon. Now, flowers have their own set of rules, so I'm going to not talk about the difference between the first and second quarter because there is a difference. But I'm seeing that on the 5th, we see the bowels or Virgo. Virgo is known as a blooming sign, and there's another blooming sign that is Libra, and they're right together. So you always have a long string of time to plant flowers. Planting flowers breaks a lot of rules. It breaks logic as I see it. The more I study Hellenistic astrology, the astrology the Greeks or Romans practice, the more I see that it does follow logic. It's just that we've forgotten what that logic was. But in Appalachia, we call Virgo and Libra the blooming signs. So we know that if we're planting flower seeds or vines, we can plant the 5th, the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, and the 9th. And then for a bonus, the sign moves out of the blooming signs, but it moves into Scorpio.
Yeah.
Scorpio, there are 3 sweet spots. This is when I become the sign person. If you see something in Scorpio, which is the loins, or sometimes they'll say the secrets, I've seen it called the privates. Scorpio, Pisces. Pisces is called the feet, or Cancer, the crab, the heart. I'm sorry, the
breast.
Yeah, the breast. That is the time that you can plant anything. And those are the 3 top signs. So you really could, Sandy, get out there and throw you some flower seeds down anytime.
I'm thinking.
From all that week.
Yeah.
All that week, and even on the 11th. Some people, if you're a moon person, you're not going to plant on these quarters because that's one of the things. We're supposed to avoid planting when the moon is new or when it changes phases. But as my kids used to say when they wanted to eat dessert first, can't we just forget about the rule of eating food today? Sometimes I'll just have to forget about that rule because the Scorpio is such a sweet spot. That's a long time to get some flowers going.
It really is.
Yeah, it's a long time. Now, that's flower seeds. That's not bulbs. So let's pop down and let's look past the 19th. And let's see, because we know the moon is waning after the 19th. And we want to see if we can find, we're not going to find Virgo or Libra. We're not going to find a blooming sign, but we might find another fruitful sign. And there's the feet, 19th and 20th. We see the feet, the fishes, Pisces. That's a water sign. So When I will really want to split hairs on this, I will say, okay, we're not supposed to plant on a full moon, but look, that moon is full in the afternoon. So I could get out after midnight if I wanted
Yeah.
to, get up way in the early morning. So,
Now that's interesting. That's a really interesting thing that we haven't talked about. Yeah.
I've heard the 12-hour rule.
Yeah.
I've not seen that written anywhere, but I've just heard people say, "Oh, well, just wait till 12 hours." You know, the time is posted.
It's 1:26 p.m. is a
Yeah.
full moon. Yeah.
Yeah, so wait till 12 hours. So I could be out there after midnight scattering out some seeds or working on some bulbs. Or you could just decide you're a sign person and plant anyway.
Yeah.
You know, the theory is these signs are supposedly the three water signs: the Cancer, the Pisces, and Scorpio, the loins. I grew up, and I didn't grow up. At 10 years in North Georgia, we called it the secrets.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll hear me say the secrets. And the thing about folklore again is it can be called one thing in one part of Appalachia, and it can be called another thing in another part of Appalachia. I've seen, we know this in music, how the song is played in a different valley. And if we look on the Frank Brown folklore collection, 7 volumes, luckily you can find it online. And if you go and read that part about planting, you'll see that they do use the different words. They use some different terminologies. So it is not, this knowledge doesn't live at a university. This knowledge is with the people. And so with those people in that community, in their little valley on the other side of that hill, they said things a certain way. And just like they passed their seeds down and around, they pass these words down and around. If I ask for someone, do you use heritage seeds?
Mm-hmm.
Or they might say, I'm sorry, I put in a dog door because and they would say, you mean old timey seeds?
Yeah. Yeah.
But in another place they might say heirloom seeds.
And it's also their calendar. So where you buy your calendar, that community is going to stick with the terminology that's on the calendar. As Rosann said, that some calendars say the secrets. The one that I showed you that I just picked up 2 weeks ago does say secrets, but on her calendar, you notice it doesn't say secrets. So I think you picked a perfect word to use the differences with. Okay, so let's go back to the quiz, because this is really they got some really interesting questions here. So when is the best time to mow, clear land, and pull weeds? And I think this hits our topic. These are killing signs. Well, mow, you don't want to kill your yard, but in general, you want to pull weeds. And so mow, clear land, and pull weeds. Does anybody have a guess for when you want to do that? Would that be killing signs, even if you're mowing?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it probably had more to do with how close you mowed to the ground. And
Yeah,
help your lawn. But in general, this goes for hair cutting too, because what is mowing the lawn but cutting its hair, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want that haircut to last, or if you want the lawn to last longer at the length you cut it on a decreasing moon. But if you want that lawn to really grow, if you want your hair to really grow, you have it cut on an increasing moon. So the idea would be that, first of all, find wherever Leo is, find where the heart is. And really, sign person says, do your destroying on that day. So who can see where Leo is in the month of August?
So that's going to be the 3rd and the 4th.
And so the 3rd is in the last quarter.
Yeah.
The moon is so dark it can't get any darker. So when the old almanac said mo mo mo, they were looking for dates like this. Something in the very last quarter, something in the killing sign. And you could say that Monday, the 4th, it's still dark.
Yeah.
So never cut a tree in August unless you want to kill it. You might find that folklore too. I think that is because this what happens in August around Leo. With the sun is in Leo. We usually don't talk about sun signs and planting by the signs, but this is an exception. When it comes to mowing or clearing land, we want to. The sun is in Leo, the moon is in Leo, and you got on Monday you have a new moon, and you're supposed to avoid that clash because clashy killing things can happen. So if you got land you've been trying to clear, I mean, it may just be a small patch out behind your garage, like I'm working on. The 3rd and 4th is when I really need to be out there. And that is definitely, I don't want to go prune anything right now. I probably wouldn't prune anything right now anyway, because it's not the right time of year. But if you want something to, as my grandma would say, I want to kill it and I want it to stay killed with a T. So it might stay killed if you tried it this week. The thing about this month is that August has 2 fourth quarters, 2 last quarters.
I was looking too. Look at the line down at the bottom.
We start off with a dark moon and we end in a dark moon. And so look at the 30th and the 31st. We essentially have the same situation on the 30th and 31st when the moon is in Leo that we have on the 3rd and 4th. Now, by the 30th and 31st, the sun will have moved out of Leo. But that's still a good time. That's still a good time to cut on a waning moon when the signs are in the heart. That is the time to mow or clear land or pull weeds. Sometimes destroy weird growths that you see on stuff. However, don't have surgery when the signs are in the heart. A woman told me of no kind, nowhere. Now, if it's emergency, I'm not a doctor. Please do what your doctor advises.
Yes,
but in general, people will consult the signs when it's time to have a surgery. And if you were on the farm and you had animals to do procedures on, and farmers were homemade veterinarians back in the day, they would pay really attention to these signs. They wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't do anything to an animal if the signs were in Leo. If they were gelding that animal or castrating that animal, I'm not sure what the correct term is because I have never done that. These hands won't do that. I can promise you. You're not going to want to do when the signs are in the secrets, when the signs are in the loins. The old theory that comes right out of Roman times is that wherever the sign is, the body part associated with the sign is said to be more sensitive. That's thousands of years old, that folk belief system. Also, when you go to the dentist, you don't want to go when the signs are in the head. Again, the dentist is working on your head. So we can see that the signs are in the head when.
So I know we got the ram. The ram is the head,
the
right?
ram is the head.
So I first went to the 21st and 22nd. What about the neck? Is the neck considered a head too? Because that would be the full.
You know, I have heard some people say, my dentist, the person who booked the appointments, planted by the signs, and she'd call me up and she said, "We got a cancellation, but the signs are in the neck, and that's really too close to the head for my taste." Yeah. So, you know, having your dental schedule by the signs, yeah. So the idea is, if you're having something done to your body or to a body, well, it could be the body of an animal, And if you've got to dehorn something, you definitely don't want the signs to be in the head. You want them to be further on down.
The feet.
Even if you could get it to the feet, that is great. You'll see a lot of advice that is the time to dehorn your animals. So if you can remember that a huge part of this folk or belief system comes out of the Middle Ages, when printing was a little more accessible, and or maybe the early modern era, because they would have these woodcuts that would have this man, he looked like Michelangelo's man, except that body parts were labeled with zodiac signs. So if you went to a doctor and you were to be bled, or the doctor would come to you in those days, he would consult, where am I going to bleed this person, and where are the signs? These hands not going to bleed anybody either, or be bled.
Yeah.
There are a lot of rules about, it's not on this calendar, but I've read when it's time to purge. Their time to purge by stuff comes out of your orifices. I'll put that way. So there's a rule about each one. But that just sounds a little too bulimic encouraging for me. So
well, this is great, because we always try to mention very briefly that this is not, hey baby, what's your sign? This is not, hey, I'm a Leo, you're a Taurus. They're just using the zodiac kind of as way of placing what we're working with the moon and the calendar and the planning by the sun. So I don't want everybody to think that it's going back to the 70s and the zodiac, and you can't date somebody if they're that sign, because it's not. But I love how you're talking so much about the Romans today, and this is something that they follow. This is a learned, I don't want to say behavior, but I keep wanting to say behavior, but it's a learned as they went actions that they found worked.
Yeah, it's a folk belief, or you could say it's a folk practice. That's what we'd say now. Back in the day, astrology and medicine and science, they were all balled up into one with the four humors, whether a person was sanguine or melancholic. I have not officially studied any kind of medical astrology. I've studied enough Hellenistic astrology to know that it was bound up with medicine and science. It didn't have the pejorative outlook that it can have now in some circles, it meaning astrology. I think what fascinates me when it all comes down is that here we are in Appalachia, 2024, and these traditions have been kept alive that are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. True, it can be a remnant of a tradition, because contemporary medical astrologies, they don't just look at what the moon is doing. They look at what all the other planets are doing. They look at the time you took to your bed to do their forecasting with. So again, we've maintained in Appalachia a remnant of an old tradition.
I mean, that's really fascinating. If you think about, we always talk about, hey, yeah, I saw this on my mom or my grandmother's, kitchen. I saw this calendar, which we love. We love that we're keeping the tradition of Appalachians alive, that without a doubt. And that's kind of why we started this. But today, you're really bringing me back further. And I'm not only talking about my Appalachian ancestors, I'm talking about ones that were ancestors before they came to Appalachia, because obviously they brought this with them. And then when you think about where all your ancestors might have come from, we'll just throw out a general term of Europe. And now we're taking you back to some folklore and traditions in the Roman times. And it's fascinating. We always talk sometimes about, no matter what you do, some things just never change.
Yeah, I like that. For me, there's a little bit of I don't know, security. If I'm
Yeah.
gardening and I want to know what it is I do today, I got a plan because I can look and I can see. Some people say, "Oh, the gardens turn out great because they're in the garden every day." Well, yeah. If you want your garden to turn out great, don't just plant it and leave it.
Yeah.
So
This would be, you
every
have
day there's something to do according to this calendar. The trick is learning the rules.
to.
I know it's easy to just pop in on somebody's social media and say, what do I do today? But once you learn the rules, like you can always plant in a water sign. The 3 water signs are, but you don't want to try to harvest in a water sign. You know, if you can learn, there's that Cancer, Leo,
Yeah.
opposition. That's not a good word because opposition has a specific meaning in traditional
It's like a
astrology.
seesaw. One works, one doesn't at one
Continuum.
time. Yeah.
One works and one doesn't. One
And-
works for planting and one doesn't. One works for
Yeah.
harvesting and one doesn't. I've seen it written, do not harvest in a water sign. Do not harvest in a water sign. If you want to destroy something, you want to kill in sign. So if you can think of that, Cancer is your very A+ student.
Mhm.
And then you've got Leo.
You're going to
which
kill
is a effective student, you know. But buddy, he can probably put you up a good gate in the garden. There's something that F student can do, and that's the magic of a teacher is to find what motivates that failing student. Find that sweet spot. So for Leo, for the killing signs, the sweet spots are doing exactly that. They're destroying. I want to talk about Aries for a second. Aries, the ram. Because we might, for some folks in Appalachia, you might be starting to can or preserve some of that garden produce. So when you are putting things using a preservation method that is not canning, that is not drying, it's fermentation. That is said to always do that when the signs are in the head. I don't know why, if you're using a fermentation method of food preservation, but I was literally driving out when I was moving and I stopped at a neighbor. Hey, I just want to make sure that I make my sauerkraut when the signs are in the head. She said, that's right. But the closer down it gets to the heart of the bowels, it's going to sour up on you.
Oh.
So yeah.
Like a broken heart.
I've never made sauerkraut. But you know, this is the time when they complement each other. Joe, you would probably know this person that I stopped to ask. Joe is up in North Georgia. The best fertilizer is the farmers. Man, I like that.
I like that too.
I'm going to quote you on that. Yeah.
As we're talking about being in a garden every day.
Yeah. And giving attention
to his crops.
It is so much fun to plant, and the smell of that earth being turned over, or even if you do no-till, it's still fun to plant. And to watch those little baby seeds come up, or to raise those tomato seeds and then plant them so like little chickies. Oh, that's fun. What is not fun is the weeding.
Yeah.
What is not fun to me is it's not even the picking and the harvesting. I mean, when I go into harvest okra, man, I got safety glasses on. I got full-toed shoes. I got long sleeves. And I got gloves, and the feeling of that okra on my skin. I don't have any kind of sensory anything. I just don't like that particular feeling. And my mother used to say, when anybody had done something bad, you know, my mother was not a mean person. She just wouldn't say mean words, and she wouldn't say, like I would say, he needs to be shot. She would say, he needs to be run naked through the okra patch. Now that would be a heck of a gauntlet.
That would be. That's a heck of a punishment.
Yeah, naked through the okra patch. I forgot what I was talking about, Sandy.
I know it's funny too, because somebody reminded me of something we do. I don't know if this is just in the South, or if this is Appalachian, or if this is Appalachian South, but somebody was telling me that is not from the area, that we are kind of out there weird with our bugs that annoy us. And I was like, why is that? And he goes, well, number one, you like give them names, and you talk like, the gnats and stuff are you know, the mascot of the South. But he goes, you talk to your bugs before you kill them. And I go, what? And apparently I had done that to him, and I didn't realize I've done that to him. And he goes, yeah, because he said you were talking about tomato worms. That's how I come out, tomato worms and stuff. And he's like, you're like, well, didn't you just come up here and destroy everything? And then he goes, you're sitting here having a conversation with this worm before you kill it. I'm like,
what? That's a new one on me. I knew about the bees, telling the bees when somebody's gone. I'd read that, and that's been in some
and it's
popular
like, and
literature.
I
didn't know about that.
Yeah, and a fly comes in, you're like, well, didn't you just fly on in here without me noticing? We're talking to them.
Yeah.
So, this is just kind of things that we grew up with and learned from our elders, and we continue being silly with it, and we plant by the signs. So, Rosann, what is next month?
I don't even know. What is next month, Sandy?
I know.
Let's make it up. Do we do harvesting? Because we talked about harvesting, because that is, by now, if you don't have okra, if you don't have tomatoes and squash, if somebody hadn't given you need to work on your friendship skills, because
you're right about that with the tomatoes.
Yeah. Because the neighbors will be bringing it to you, and you don't want it, and you try to give it to them. So what are you going to do with all this stuff? Sometimes that starts, those two things start coming in now, and have been for a while. But in September, people are really, really trying to glean that garden as much as they can. Now, what my mom did was, she put that stuff in the freezer. She would blanch it and put it in the freezer. She was also working on outsourcing that deer meat she had. She would be cooking for the dogs. I still have the pan, and yes, now I cook for dogs. She would, because she was making room for the new venison that would come in. So when my dad brought the new venison home in November, and she had those vegetables from the garden, that's when she canned vegetable soup, and venison was the meat for that soup. That is just some hard work. You have to use, you can't use the water boiling method, because it'll kill everybody on the planet. You'd make enough botulism. That's definitely hard canning work. So maybe in September we can talk about when should we harvest?
Use the time to reap. That was your. So, and it's interesting. Now, again, we talk about different regions of Appalachia, different things. And remember, Rosann and I are in North Georgia, so we're more Southern Appalachian. And Chris is, Chris, I'm not sure if you're in Northern Appalachia or North Central Appalachia, but I know you're in Ohio. And she said that they're not having a lot of crops right now, because it's just starting to come in up north. So it's interesting.
Yeah, Chris, I think you're spot on about that. I noticed that when 𝗶𝗂𝗂𝗀𝗂𝗀𝗂𝗂 gives his, he does a good job. He's a former writer, and so he writes little mini essays that I find very informative. And he always includes, where he is, what planting zone he's in, and he's in Kentucky, so it's he's going to have cooler days than I have. So, and you're going to probably have cooler days up there in Ohio than he has. So the planting by the signs has never replaced common sense. You just don't plant cool weather crops, and then you don't plant lettuce in July. In Dahlonega, my lettuce, I was lucky to be getting it by May. It was pretty much out of there by April. So it depends on where you are. 6B. Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
And we should probably mention this year, we were enlightened, I think our very first show this year, that the US, I think it's the USDA. Is it the USDA that does this? They changed the maps. So my zone changed. And I'm not even sure what zone I am right now. but my zone changed.
The plant harvesting maps, the hardiness zones have changed for the first time in a long time. They don't change those very often. So yeah, if it's soggy, raining, you can't plant by the signs. You can't plant, period. So you just use your common sense that you have, and then layer the planting by the signs on top of that.
Now, see, I find this fascinating because I know where both of these ladies live. So Chris lives on more the East Coast, and Shelley lives more on the West Coast. And look at, the zone is kind of sharing here.
Yeah, and I have questions about that too, because when I look at a map that shows me, where are their mountains, and then I look at the zones, it doesn't seem to be key to geography, but I don't know how they figured that out.
I would agree. And let me see if I can pull this up real quick for everybody. The new map, and I will drop the link. This is actually from, what do you know, University of Georgia Extension. That just happened to happen. It's the new USDA plant hardiness zone that is out. Yeah. And I find it fascinating that they changed. I had no clue that they were going to do that.
And if you talk to your neighbors, and if you're in a small enough town, you will know that where I was in Dahlonega, that was different than the north of the county. Dahlonega is one of those, Lumpkin is one of those long counties. So it's a different zone at the top of the county than the bottom of the county.
Yeah.
Or on the other side of the mountain. So, there's this map, and then there's talking to neighbors who have been at it much longer than I have. That's where I got a lot of my gardening information.
And this is you're right. This will be very interesting to see how we start. We should have probably looked at it this year, but I didn't, because I'm so zoned in my own zone that I've had for a bazillion years that I just couldn't make my brain look at a different zone. So my problem is we've got a little warmer, so I could do a little bit more tropical than I would normally do, but I'm going to miss out on a few other ones that I think I would love to do. So I think next year is really when we're going to start looking at the new zones. Maybe.
I have not really looked at mine. I noticed that I could plant three of a crop of winter greens. I think I talked about this before. We think we don't know where the winter greens seed. We think it was something that hybridized a long time ago. It was a mom seed and a dad seed, and they made this baby seed that nobody knows exactly what it is. The folks in Rabun County called it salad. And when Lake Rabun was, when the area was flooded, people had to leave their homes, and they came a little bit further south into the county next to ours, and they brought these wintergreen seeds with them. And it's not wintergreen the herb. When I asked, what do you call it, wintergreen, he said, cause it's green and it grows in winter. So there you go, Rosann. It tasted like a mild mustard and a little bit like a turnip. My students would eat it. They dried it. They did everything with it. So it's quite crunchy.
And I'll tell you that I used to be a 7B, and I'm now an 8A. So, it's not a drastic change, but it is a change. So when you guys have a chance, check it out. And if you start to adjust your planting, come back and tell us, because I'm really curious what I'm going to do. And if you guys have already started and worked on it, then come back and tell us, and we'll see what, how it works, if it goes. I don't think it's a huge change for me, but I'm curious.
Yeah, me too. And I would love to know what, John, if Ireland has something like this, if they have zones, if they have a form of planting by the signs. I don't know any of those things. So John might have to be your guest. I'm volunteering.
Yeah, we might have to pull Irish John in, and so he can talk to us and give us a little tour with his camera too.
Oh, I like that.
His driveway, because those were very beautiful. I'm still just blown away by his first picture that he sent of Ireland. And I agree, Rosann.
I know.
Maybe what we should do is take our show on the road.
Oh, I like that even better. John will just show up. As my students used to say, don't worry, we'll couch surf.
There we go.
We'll just sleep on your
Oh,
couch.
good. He's still here. John, you think we're kidding? We're not.
Thank y'all so much. And I really appreciate Chris and Shelly and John sharing your photos. That just brings it all home for me.
And if you're watching live, thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for sharing your photos. If you're watching after the fact, thank you as well. And please note, send us your photos, send it to my email. We're also on Discord. We've got different options because we're coming into harvest. We want to see what you got. This is where we started in January, Rosann, and now the proof is in the garden.
There you go.
Let's see it. So bye guys. See you next month.